Hello and welcome to this month's Consent Dojo. We've been going strong and building our consent muscle, one amazing conversation at a time. Consent is a hot topic right now. Unfortunately, it's been a hot topic because so much of poor behavior, and also become a hot topic because of personal empowerment and cultural empowerment. Consent, seemingly simple, isn't. Seemingly easy, isn't. Highly nuanced and worth deep thought. On the other hand, don't let the nuance and the complexity make you throw your hands up. Consent serves us all well because good consent practice allows all of us to be happy. Trust me, all of us to be happy and more likely to get what we want. Now, we have a special guest today, and we're going to be talking about sex workers and boundary. Yes. I want to read about Queen Anna Blue, and here's my little official blurb here. She's a ProDomme, Pansexual, Black, Leather, and Lifestyle Switch. She's from SoCal, but recently moved to the Midwest, and she teaches all over the US in person and virtually. Anna says that she enjoys teaching because she loves helping people feel welcomed, accepted, and heard, because she believes that we are all powerful, beautiful beings who just need someone to help guide them and believe in them. Also, you helped me out with trying to understand TikTok.
Oh yeah.
Um,
During the
that was,
pandemic.
that was really helpful. I spent a little bit of time doing that, and then I just have so much else going on. And it's one of those, I mean to do that, but you are so generous and compassionate with sharing with
Oh,
people. So I want to start with that. And I know you've got a slideshow for us. So
yes.
I'm going to get off the stage and let you run, and I'm going to go see what questions folks have for you.
All righty. Thank you, Midori. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of Consent Dojo history and to help spread information to everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Happy Pride. I got my Pride dress on. And I think it's very important that we talk about consent and sex workers, boundaries and sex workers, because that's not usually put together. It's usually about, okay, money, playing, outfits, sexiness, sex workers. But we do have our consent, trampled on. Or there's some times where you might meet a pro that tries to take away consent from one of their clients. So we're going to touch on a lot of different things tonight. And I want you to ask questions, bring up scenarios, talk about some of the stories and stuff that you've been through. Yes, we're going to be talking and all that, but we want to hear from you too. So I do have a little PowerPoint because I love PowerPoints. So let's get this show started. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, can everyone see that? Just want to make sure.
Affirmative on my end.
Woohoo! All righty, let's go. The pro said no, sex work and boundaries. So Midori already told you a little bit about me. Pansexual, Black leather, pro-dominatrix, lifestyle switch, leather title holder. I love teaching. I really enjoy it. Some of my favorite sessions are when people come up to me and say, hey, thank you for seeing me, for hearing me, for giving me this moment, because I don't have someone in my life that does. I love teaching because I love my students. I want you to go out there and play and get closer to your partners. And there's going to be a lot of pros that you meet that aren't educators, that don't want to teach you, that don't want to help you grow, where it's just transactional for them. And what I do, it might be transactional in some ways, but I also do want to be a part of your growth and be there for you. I tell people my inbox is always open. Don't be afraid to message me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, so here's our little roadmap. We're going to go over, why does the world need pros? Why do people become ProDoms? What are some in-person boundaries, virtual boundaries, phone boundaries, advice for when clients try to cross your boundaries, boundaries for clients that may differ from those of your personal partners. Do boundaries vary between ProDoms, ProSwitches, and ProSubs? And if you didn't know, yes, ProSwitches and ProSubs are a thing, not just ProDoms. How do you handle when a client changes their mind about seeing you because they stated the boundary that they didn't like? And then we're going to talk about something called invalid consent. So that's going to be a fun, tough topic. All right. So why does the world need ProDoms, ProSwitches, and ProSubmissives? Well, people see us because they're curious about kink. They're curious about their orientation. They want to try something that they might not be able to try amongst their friends or amongst their significant others. You might have someone that wants to cross-dress. They want to know what it's like to get spanked. And so they come to us because they trust us. They believe that we have the skills to do these things to them and help them express themselves in certain ways without permanently damaging them. They see us because they believe that we will value discretion and not try to use their information against them. They see in us a safe space to express themselves. They get to try new things. Now, some people will think, okay, so if a person sees you and they're married or with someone, is that cheating? I like to think of it as the moments that they are with us, they get to have this release. They get to not feel so nervous or find someplace shady to practice these things. And so once they have this release and a safe space to play, then they can function just a little bit better in the world, where they're a little bit calmer in their everyday activities. And like I said in the beginning, not all professional players are educators. Some people don't want to teach. They don't want to show you how to use certain implements. They don't want to talk to you about different sexualities and orientation and dynamic styles. And so you got to make sure, if you're trying to find someone that you want to teach you things, that you ask them when in your initial correspondence, like, hey, yeah, I want to try these things, but I was wondering, can we have a conversation about this? Because you want to make sure you get good information. And when you're seeing a pro, it's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel anxious. But the key is, do you feel safe? Are you meeting this person in a place that's not too sketchy? Did you look up this pro to see, have they seen people before? Where have they played before? Are there any videos or photos of them playing with people? Why do people become ProDoms? Yeah, it's true. People become ProDoms because of the money. You can't get away from that. They do it because they like to get paid and pay their bills. But they also like to share their skills with others. ProDoms get to do all these fun activities, impact play and role play and dress up and share it with others. They get to have fun. They get to be creative. If you open my toy box right now, yeah, you're going to find like a row of floggers and canes and crops, but then you're going to find a rubber chicken, a salmon slapper, all kinds of silly things to enhance the moment. And that's what I love about what we do, is that we get to be creative. We get to have fun. We can be super silly or we can be super serious. It just depends on what you and your client negotiate. ProDoms kind of have to be good at customer service, because we can't forget this is a job and we have to be aware of how we interact with our clients at the very beginning of the correspondence, so we can really understand what they want and give them a good time and try our best to ensure that they come back. You're a ProDomme because you like to be in control. You like to be the leader. You like to be on top. You do like that little, drive of like, all right, I'm the dominant. You get to have fun toys, fun outfits. You get to feel sexy. And you understand how difficult it can be to find someone where you can be out of the closet for a moment for both of you, where you get to show this side of yourself to your client and your client gets to show this kinky fun side to you. Now, let's get to boundaries. What are some in-person boundaries that ProDoms should be aware of? Well, think about what you will and what you will not do. So sometimes I'll mentor some up and coming ProDoms and we'll talk about advertising. And I go, okay, well, what can you do? What do you want to be known for? What are you putting out into the world for clients to see, like, okay, she's holding a paddle. She must like to paddle people. So what are some things you want to do? What are some things you don't want to do? So think about that when it comes to sexual acts, penetrative acts. What type of role plays do you like to engage in? What role plays do you not like to engage in? Maybe you don't want a role play that has to do with age play. What headspace do you want to be in? Think about what you will and will not say. You have some clients that'll come to you and say, hey, can you use this phrase? And you're like, no, I don't care how much money you're paying me. Location. Where are you having this session? Are you having it at a dungeon? Did the client ask if you can do it in a hotel? Do you have a dungeon at your house? Be safe. Don't just think about you. Think about like, okay, where are we having this? You're having sessions at your house. Is that safe? Do you have security? Who else lives at your house? How many people have your address? Think about your outfits. What are you going to wear when you have this session? That's a boundary, because sometimes, maybe you don't want to wear latex. Maybe you don't like latex. Or maybe your client's going to ask you, hey, can you wear nothing in this session? And maybe that's a boundary for you where you're like, no, I am not going to be completely naked in this scene. Think about the equipment you're going to use, how you're going to clean the equipment. You might have some people that'll say, hey, I have my own toys. And it's like, okay, that's great, but have you cleaned them? How many people have been using these toys? Because sometimes our clients don't know that they should clean their toys. And I have multiple stories about that from working at dungeons where it's just like, client will bring in toys and you ask them if they cleaned them. They're like, oh no, I didn't know I had to. I'm like, you're doing heavy scenes with the risk of cutting skin. Yes, you should clean your toys. Know that as a pro, you can say no. You can stop a scene. You can stop someone from trying to do a physical advance, touch you, kiss you. You have clients that'll say, hey, can I kiss you? And it's like, no, these are my boundaries. Make sure you go over safe words and safe gestures with your clients. Don't just have something verbal, have something nonverbal. Another thing you should do as a pro is think about how you're scheduling your sessions. Are you having breaks between your sessions? Are you taking care of your energy? Don't get so addicted to your work and the sessions and thinking, oh, I got to do all of these back to back. Take care of yourself because you don't want to get burnout. That is a real thing and you'll get exhausted. And when you get exhausted, you can't deliver a good scene to your clients. Any questions so far? Okay. What are some virtual boundaries we should think about? There's camming, there's Zoom, things like that. And it's kind of similar to the in-person boundaries. What are some things you will do? What are some things you don't want to do? What things will you say, not say? What outfits will you wear or not wear? And even virtually, You have the power to say no, turn off that camera, or not take a session. And it's very easy to get addicted to working online and just keep going and going because you're working from home. You're like, okay, I can just keep working all day because it's just easy like that. But you don't want to wear yourself out. If you're using certain platforms, make sure you know the terms of service for those platforms because there might be some things on there that you do that's not allowed on that platform. So you got to be careful with that. I was just looking at some of the TOS for some of the phone platforms that I use, and it was like, oh wow, okay, we can't talk about that anymore. So make sure you check those out every few months to make sure that nothing that you do or say gets flagged. Your environment. When you're doing these virtual sessions, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you know who can hear you, who can see you. Lock your door, put the blinds down, close the curtains so people can't see you. Because that's the last thing you want is for a neighbor to, call the authorities on you and wondering like what you're doing, what are you saying, why are you dressed that way? And set a schedule for yourself for when you do these virtual sessions. These boundaries aren't just for your clients. These boundaries are for you too, to help you practice self-care so you can continue to be a pro as long as you can. Phone boundaries. You should have a work phone number. This could be a Google number or a separate phone line that just isn't connected to your personal phone. Think about where you take these calls. Again, just like with the virtual stuff, like where are you talking? Who is in earshot of you? If you're doing texting sessions, don't wear your hands out. Use the voice to text. Try to use that so you don't get carpal tunnel and hurt your fingers from that. Type on a computer if you have that option. I love Macs because it's like, all right, I can be texting on my computer through typing. Practice how you shift the conversation if a client says something you don't want to talk about. Think about certain phrases you can use, like, oh, that's a cool topic, but I was thinking we could talk about this. Or, oh, you're so silly. Let's talk about this. But try to stay in control of the conversation. You might have someone that will just go on a tangent and just keep talking and talking and talking about something you might not want to talk about or something that's against the TOS. And you don't want your account shut down because this person kept talking about some topics that you didn't want to discuss. Sometimes phone sessions can be more difficult than in-person sessions because you got to think about, okay, what tone do I use? And phone sessions sometimes can be super quick, so you have like seconds to win them over and to keep them engaged. You got to think about, does this person just want to talk to me? Maybe they just want to spill their guts, or do they want to hear me tell stories? And then sometimes the clients are going to tell you stories and you have to think about, okay, is that story true? Or do I just go with the flow and let them say that? And, I'll just exclaim about how cool and crazy and sexy and fun that sounded. Again, set a schedule for yourself when you do these phone sessions. And yeah, know the TOS of the platforms because they are listening. It does happen where profiles get flagged, where it's like, hey, how come I can't access my profile right now? Or hey, how come they're holding my money? Because there was some infraction of some kind that you did. So what is some advice when clients try to cross your boundaries? So what does crossing boundaries look like? Well, you might have someone say to you, well, no one knows we're doing this. What if I pay you more? And they'll just lay out a bunch of cash on the table. You're just a sex worker anyway, trying to diminish what you do and say that, you'll do anything for money or this isn't a real job. You'll have some people that will try to win you over with their looks. Don't you think I'm attractive? You sure you don't want to do certain things with me? Be careful telling your clients personal information because sometimes they can use it against you. Remember, yes, your clients are humans. We want to treat them with respect and understand they have feelings. But remember, this is your job. Let's keep it transactional and don't share too much about yourself because there are some people out there that don't have your best interests at heart and will use that information to push your boundaries and do things you don't want to do. Don't get distracted by the money. Just because they pay doesn't mean they get it all their way. The money's going to come. Clients will come and go. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to end a session. I like to tell people some of your best friends when you're a pro are deposits and no refunds. Deposits are important because it shows that a couple of things that they are serious about seeing you, shows they do have money, and it locks down your time. It puts them on the schedule. I tell people if you leave a deposit, you were on the schedule. I set this time aside for you. You don't leave a deposit, you might be a walk-in, but somebody else might come and take that time because they paid a deposit. No refunds are very important because let's say you had a session and you had to say no and kick them out, they don't get their money back. So it's an incentive for them to be on their best behavior. Money is not going to win you over. Money is nice, but don't let it persuade you to do things you don't want to do and do things that are illegal that could get you in trouble. Don't get too comfortable and relaxed with your client. Don't let your guard down. Don't let them try to talk you out of your boundaries. Be clear about what you offer in your sessions. Ask the client what kind of scene they're looking for, and make sure you go over the details about what you want to do in this session. Some clients will leave if, you don't want to do what they want to do, and others will say, hey, I'm sorry, that was wrong, and they'll correct their behavior and keep the session going. And I didn't say might when clients try to cross your boundaries. Clients will. They will try to push your boundaries. It is going to happen. Do boundaries for clients differ from those of your personal partners? Well, your boundaries should be different. You need to know how to separate your work life from your personal life. Set boundaries for when you work. Remember, pro work is transactional. It's fun, but it's work, and there should be limits to how close you get to people. Yes, some of our clients might become friends and lifelong servants, but that takes time. That is very rare that is going to happen. We care about our clients, but we have to practice self-care first. So here's an Anna opinion. Being a pro to find partners is not a good idea. A lot of mistakes and injuries can happen when you try to do this. I've seen some pros like, oh yeah, maybe if I become a pro, I'll find a partner and, and they'll pay my session fee. That means they'll have money and they'll take care of me. And that's not always, that's not going to work. That sounds like a lot of trouble. And if you're looking for someone that is going to be kinky and pay you all the time like that, then I would suggest joining the sugar daddy mama sites for that. They're real, they exist. You're gonna have clients that fall in love with you, that get infatuated with you, just obsessed with you. And for multiple reasons, you're their safe space. in their eyes, you are their best friend. And it can be tough breaking their hearts. But again, you have to be safe and you have to draw the line and say, hey, thank you. I appreciate that I offer such comfort for you, but I have to let you know that, you're my client, care about you, but I have to make sure that we keep this as a pro and client interaction. Limit how much time you talk to your clients. Your time is money, and you want to make sure that you know how to separate yourself from your work and from your clients. Don't forget to charge for your time. Don't let people talk to you too much for free. If you have like a pay per message site that they can talk to you to, do that so they're not just sending you long messages. You're going to have clients that want to be personal slaves, or they want to do stuff in your house, drive you around, do some errands for you. But be careful with that because, again, they're getting close. Make sure that you are doing what you need to vet these people. Make sure you feel safe with them and don't just get all excited like, oh, they want to do my dishes and, clean my house and give me the money for doing it. So don't get, in Dom frenzy. Do boundaries vary between ProDoms, ProSwitches, and ProSubmissives? A little bit. They're going to vary a little bit because their jobs are a little bit different. Some of the concerns for ProSwitches and ProSubmissives are that there's a high chance they're going to see people that don't know what they're doing. These are the people that just buy toys that look like the plastic whips. You're going to have the people that buy the plastic whips, and then you're going to have the people that buy like the $400 whip and flogger because they're just like, oh, I'm fancy, and they don't know how to use it. They just think that, oh, my money can buy me anything, and I just swing it, right? I took one of my clients to a class. I was like, hey, he was so excited. He bought this $400 flogger. And this was back when I was a ProSwitch and I would bottom, and he didn't know what he was doing. And I was like, hey, I enjoy our sessions, but would you be open to going to a flogging class with me? And he was like, okay, but he's like, I don't think I need it. And I was like, just come, it'll be fun. And so he goes and he's like, oh my gosh, my shoulder hurts. And I was like, that's because you just learned how to correctly throw a flogger. So sometimes we have to gently tell our clients, like, hey, this is how you should do this. Because our clients, they've been influenced by porn and movies and society. And sometimes you'll have those people that see us that go like, oh, being a dominant means you're just mean, loud, and pain inflicting. And it's more than that. I like to think that pro subs and pro submissives are some of the best actors in the world because, they have to take some of those hits that sometimes they're in the wrong spot, or they have to pretend that it's enjoyable, but you still, as a pro switch and pro subs, need to speak up for yourself and have boundaries. And there are certain phrases you can say to sound assertive, but still stay in your submissive role. Some things like, that felt great, but what would really feel great if you did it like this? Or, I want to keep playing with you, but I don't want to do that anymore. Do you have any other toys that we can try? Or what if we use this spanking bench instead of being on the cross for 2 hours? Don't be afraid to end the scene, switches and subs. You have power too. You have a voice. Also remember, money isn't everything. New clients will come. And every pro needs to know the rules and laws for the platforms they are using, dungeons, the state and city and county, because those laws can vary even within the same state between cities. So you need to figure out like, hey, What can I do in this city that won't be considered something that's illegal or get you in trouble? And if you can, and you're a pro, get your own website and get your own email address. How do you handle when a client changes their mind about seeing you due to a boundary you stated that they didn't like? This happened a lot during the pandemic, where during going to the dungeon, some clients did want to go to a dungeon because they had to be masked or they had to show that they were vaxxed. And, some people didn't have a session, some people did. Some people will never understand why you have certain boundaries. That's okay. It isn't your job to try to get people to understand why you have a boundary. People who respect you respect your boundaries. People who don't respect you will fight your boundaries. Why do people try to fight, discuss, negotiate your boundaries? Because they want to push your limits. They're trying to get their way no matter what. They don't respect you or your profession. This person maybe has never been told no. So, what should you do when someone is trying to fight your boundary? Well, first of all, you should feel a little validated because that means you are doing the right thing for you. And this is showing you that this person is not good for you. You should not play with this person. You should not be around this person. And don't give in because they will keep pushing for more. If you let them get away with this one time, they're going to keep pushing. They're going to remember, and they're not going to trust any other boundary that you set because you already let them in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about invalid consent and coercion. And I have a friend to thank for this last slide for going over invalid consent, because we often hear about, oh, valid consent, enthusiastic consent, the consent tea video, the Planned Parenthood image about consent, fries. But let's talk about invalid consent. Consent is invalid when you have these three F's at some point: force, fear, and fraud. Did this person try to force you to do something? Whether it's physical, mental, try to use some information against you. Did they frighten you into doing something? Was there fraud involved? Maybe they talked about all the skills they had, all the people they know, and they don't know what they're doing and they end up hurting you all the time. I have people messaging me, oh yeah, I know Mistress Cyan. I'm like, everyone knows Mistress Cyan. Like people will throw out names and being like, oh, if you don't have a session with me, I'm gonna tell her. And it's just like, okay, you saying that line shows me that you're an angry person that I don't want to be in a room alone with. Did this person exploit your ability to make sound decisions? Were you drunk? Were you high? Were you asleep or sleepy? Were you unconscious? Were you injured? Maybe due to a certain mental health condition, you couldn't make a sound decision about something that they wanted to do that they know you did not want to do. And clients will try to invalidate the consent and boundaries of pros all the time. They will try it. And sometimes, unfortunately, pros will try to invalidate the consent and boundaries of clients. And that's a whole class right there about some of the pros that make a lot of us look bad, where they are trying to use blackmail in an unethical way, where they're trying to do mindfucking activities that are not appropriate for certain people because they might not have the background for it. They don't know how to negotiate properly or do the aftercare for it. You'll have some people that will enter into financial financial domination and not really think about, okay, I need to make sure that this client has enough money to pay their bills and keep their house. And in my financial domination classes, I tell people like, hey, your client is no good to you if they are homeless and not working. So if you're going to be involved in that, get money, but make sure that they can pay their bills. So let's see. Little recap about the slides we just went over. Pros exist so clients have a safe space to explore and play. Not our pros or educators. People become pros because it makes money, it's fun, they can do fun activities with others who might not have had the chance to do those with the people that are around them. When it comes to in-person boundaries, think about location, headspace, outfits, equipments, phrases, sexual acts, and safe words and gestures. Virtual and phone boundaries. Look up those TOS of platforms. Know how to change the subject with clients when they bring up something that you don't want to talk about, or either that is on that list of illegal things to talk about on the TOS. Schedule when you work. It can be so exciting when you start out and you're getting all these sessions and you're making all this money and you're like, all right, I'm gonna work from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and you can get worn out and you don't want to do that so fast. You want to make yourself don't make yourself too available. Set a schedule. When a client crosses your boundary, don't be afraid to address it and end the scene if necessary. Your best friends are deposits and no refunds. Keep your work transactional. Boundaries for clients and work are different than boundaries for your personal play partners. Boundaries do vary a little bit for switches and subs than they do for our ProDoms. And invalid consent. Remember those 3 F's: fear, force, and fraud. So I know we're going to go over some questions, but I just want to thank everybody again for showing up. Remember to think before you kink. I do have some websites where I have the slides posted: queenanna.gumroad.com/the pro set no slides. I think we're going to put that in the chat. Let's see. I also, at the end of my slides, I have like a list of my favorite authors. And so, oh, look at that, Midori's there. And ways you can reach me: my email, my website, my Gumroad. I also have a Patreon where people can sign up and have access to the classes on my Gumroad. On my Gumroad, I have recorded classes, the slides, and helpful worksheets. If there's negotiation worksheets, I have a long form, short form. There's the book club recordings as well as the book club notes. And yeah, I appreciate, oh, and then here's the last slide, has all the links to the bears and shirts you saw in the presentation, because I thought those are really cute. All right, let's see.
And let me come on back into, well, let's see. Is it both of us now? This should be both of us. Oops. How am I?
Oh no.
That's weird. Hold on. Add spotlight. There we go. Hi.
Did it work?
Yes. And hopefully everyone can see both of us up now. Thank you for that. And I want some stories. And I also want to ask the attendees, you want stories? I want stories. What kind of stories do you want?
Oh, let's see.
Yeah.
I always have stories.
Yeah.
I actually did have a client asked me, he was like, "Don't you find me attractive?" He's like, "Don't you get tired of seeing like old fat guys all the time?" Because he was trying to get me to do stuff with him. I was like, honey, no, I am like 70% lesbian. Like, this is not going to work.
Well, he didn't come
Um,
back with the line of, but lesbians like me too.
right? Or they come with the line like, "Are you sure? Maybe you just haven't had a good one." um, I had a very inappropriate client. Um, we actually had to like kick him out the dungeon, where he would go like, "Hey, do you have anyone under 18 that would play with me, or do you have anyone that looks under 18?" And it was just like, "You're gross. No, that is not what we do here." Let's see. Yeah, you get the people that'll try to get you to meet them in a hotel room. And it's just like, no, there are dungeons we can do this at. And the safety of doing it at a dungeon is that there's other pros that are probably there playing, or you're going to have someone at least at the desk that if you scream or something, they can come and run to you. So you want to make sure that you're not completely alone, and for the client. And you will get messages too where people are like, "Can we be completely alone?" And I'm like, "No." This is, oh, the person was not a cop. He was not a cop that was asking about the 18-year-olds. No, he was gross. That's what he was.
Yeah.
um yeah, he was actually um the one I took to the flogging class, but then he revealed his true nature.
And somebody wrote, I'm going to read this for the recording purposes. And when I'm reading these, so you know, I'm not reading people's names. So somebody wrote, I had a similar situation with a client. Since he arrived, he tried to make comments that made me feel uncomfortable about whether we were going to have sex if he paid me more. I ended the session.
Yeah. And that'll happen where they'll be like, okay, they're like, "So what's next?" I'm like, "What do you mean what's next? The session's over."
Hmm. When you were first starting out, and when you were first starting out doing pro work, how did you learn about setting boundaries? Did somebody talk to you about this, or did you have to figure it out as you went?
So this will probably the answer to this question will probably fit with the Q&A we just got. Did you start off pro or did you transition to pro? So I started off lifestyle. Actually, I will say I started off in the swinger community first. And then I started going to the dungeon and going to parties. And I remember my first party, I was like, it was my birthday. And I was like, "I am in heaven. I love all the sounds, the outfits. Oh, she's getting kicked. Oh, there's an orgasm." Like, I was in like kinky adult heaven. And I was like, I want to know more. So I was taking classes and classes. And then my friends were like, "Hey, can you spank me? Can you flog me?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And I was like, "Oh, I like this power." And I was like, I want to know how to do this correctly. Cause I was just like, I was also pre-med, and I was like, I know there's certain spots I shouldn't be hitting, but I'm not sure. So I started taking classes, and then I was like, you know what? I wonder how it is like working at a dungeon. I think this could be fun. And the first thing people tell you is like, "Hey, you gotta be able to say no." Because people are going to try to, push you to do sexual things. I'm like, okay, I don't have problems saying no or leaving a session. And so it became a ProSwitch. And then I realized that I didn't like bottoming for strangers, that I rather leave that to my personal partners, but I didn't mind being a ProDomme to strangers, to clients. And then basically over time, I had to develop on my own what boundaries I had. And I feel like due to my education from the lifestyle portion, that helped me figure out my boundaries for the pro side of like, okay, I don't like wearing this. I don't want to do this. We're not meeting here. And when you start out, sometimes you just don't know things. And it's not, you're not dumb, you're not stupid. You just don't know. Someone never told you, you didn't know yet. And so some of these things you have to learn on your own by trial and error. But and that's why we tell people you're going to be a lifelong student. You have to take these classes, you have to read up on it, talk to other pros, find people that will help you grow. Being a pro is not competition. There's going to be someone that wants to play with you. There's going to be someone that likes your look, that likes your style. There's someone for everyone. And I believe that. And it's true, you know, like you just have to work at it, advertise yourself, keep learning, you know, build your skills.
I'm curious about, you mentioned about text sessions and phone sessions.
Mhm.
Boundaries for that. What are your boundaries on that? And what is a text session?
So am I allowed to say company names? I wasn't sure.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
you can also swear, you can, yeah, this, yeah,
Um,
this is an
I
independent project.
I love using night flirt. Like sessions and night flirts are pretty much 50-50 for like my income sometimes, where it's just I can be anywhere and just be texting. And so when I first started, I was kind of an addict to like, okay, I can be texting right now, making money. Oh, they sent a tribute. They sent a tribute. And so I had to set boundaries of when I started, you know, being on night flirt every day and when I ended, because there are sometimes I'm like, I'm up to like 11 midnight, up at 7, and I'm like, my hands hurt. Or, you know, you're taking phone calls too. Um,
So
and
tribute is the term for session fee.
um, So when it comes to night flirt, you can set how much you get paid for per text.
Mhm.
Um, and then when someone gives you a tribute, usually that's like a tip. Um, yeah. And then what's different about Sex Panther though is that's another like texting and phone site is so on Night Flirt, if someone sends you a dick pic, it goes through and you know you don't get money from it. On Sex Panther, I like how they have it featured to where if someone sends you a photo, you can set a photo fee. So if someone's going to send something, they have to pay extra.
Ha! You know, I'm cackling because
Yes.
yeah, the unconsensual photo cold call that happens in like just social platforms. Oh my God. Wow.
Right.
Huh. So you were saying in terms of boundary on text sessions around making sure that you're actually clocking in and clocking out at reasonable hours and not putting yourself into like pre-labor law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a person try to talk to me about babies on Night Flirt.
Not
Um,
like adult babies.
no. Um, and so it was a phone call, and he goes, "Oh, you and I would make beautiful babies." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, well, that's not going to happen because I don't want babies." And he was just like, "Oh, but I could just imagine you breastfeeding, and then the baby could be like, you know, touching me." And I was like, "We need to stop talking about
Yeah.
this." And then he kept going, and so I ended the phone call
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I was like, "He's getting gross." Um, I had another one. It was through texting where he's like, "I like dogs." And I was like, "Dogs are cool." And he was like, "No, I really like dogs." And I was like, "I'm going to regret this." what do you mean you really like dogs? He's like, would you let my dog lick you? And I'm like, no. He's like, I like to watch my dog lick women. And I was like, we're done too.
Mm-hmm. 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 Wow. Okay. Everything under the sun can be asked, and for everything under the sun, you can hang up.
Yeah. If y'all want another gross story, I have one about tea and coffee.
Right. Now I am curious, what about when the pros stories that you've heard of professionals crossing client boundaries?
um, it happens, unfortunately, where, a pro will think they can hurt a person as much as they want, that, they're in control, they can do ball busting, and the person doesn't want ball busting. I was actually at a party and it was all pros, and I had to stop a scene from happening because this guy walks in, and I was like, hi, what are you into? He's like, hi, I'm submissive, I like light impact. And I was like, okay, that's fun, that's cool. And then another dom walks up and she's like, I'm going to hurt you. And he's like, okay. And he's like, I'm here to meet doms. He's like, I don't guess I play with her. And so we all go into a room, he lays down, and she's like, I'm gonna hit you in the balls. And I whispered to him, I was like, do you even like CBT? He's like, no. And so I kind of just lay on top of him to protect him from her, because she's getting ready. She's getting her toys, paddles, everything. And I just lay on him.
It's kind of
And
like throwing yourself on the grenade, but backwards.
yeah. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to squish you. And then she just walks out the room.
So I have a story of um, a pro that I also had like, oh, I lead a weekend intensive for women, Forte Femme, women and non-binary folks on the femme side of things. And a few years, and it's a great program. I have private players as well as pros attending, but when pros attend, I ask them to be there for themselves
Mm-hmm.
because the course is about self-discovery. And then once they figure that out and dive deeper into themselves, and then take the lessons and apply it to work outside. So that's something I ask. And the responses from those who are pro have been wonderful, because now they're being seen first as individual. However, I had a person show up once where about a third of the way through the course, and she had like no experience with kink, and which is no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Then it came out of her mouth that she hates men, so she wants to beat them to get money out of them. So, okay. Um, I actually had to ask her to leave because,
Yeah.
yeah, and no.
Yeah. I had it the other way where a client came to one of the pro parties, and we had like pro doms and pro subs there. And he's like, I want to be a dom because I get to be mean. And we were like, no, no, that is not why people become dominants. And we will be watching you to make sure that you understand, you respect the people here.
Can you tell us what was it, a pro party is?
So there'll be parties or events hosted to where there are professional players, where there'll be like pro submissives, pro subs, and pro doms there. And usually there might be a theme, or it just might be a chance for you to play with people that have good reputations, that know what they are doing, that is in this private location. And usually there's food, and the parties are going to be a little expensive because you have all these pros in one spot. But this is an opportunity for you to play with people that have been in the scene for a long time and that have good reputation, and usually they all know each other. Oh,
Right.
there was a
Yeah.
question about, okay,
Yeah, there's a question around sensual dominance. It was more about they were asking about, do you know of any? But since the conversation is around consent, I asked them to consider their question around consent. So in terms of, you've been talking a lot about impact and such. For those who are sensual ProDoms, and if you could explain what that is for the viewers and what their boundaries might be, because I expect that you may have colleagues who are.
so when I try to explain sensual play to people, I like to ask them, well, think about when you say you want to be romantic. What do? You get the flowers because they look pretty, they smell pretty. You play the music because it sounds pretty. You might have a candle because it creates this beautiful ambiance and it smells great. You'll have some chocolates or strawberries or something tasty because it tastes great. So with sensual play, it's really about how do we engage the senses? How do we kind of slow it down a little bit? And it might include some impact, but it's more about like, how can we be a little bit more in tune with our partner? How can we engage like um our hearing and sight and smell and taste and touch? And yeah. Um Usually when it comes to figuring out whether someone does sensual play, they might have it on their in their information, that hey, they do sensual scenes. And you still have to consider consent with that too. Like, okay, does this person want to, touch you, do massages and stuff? Maybe they'll have you lay on a blanket that's really soft that you bring. Maybe there's a playlist that you use. And think about like, okay, is it gonna be like a relaxing scene? Is it gonna be torturous and funny? Like I have one friend, he'll do a sensual scene where he plays Baby Shark on a repeat. And it's a torture sensual scene. you know, I have a Lego paddle that's basically a wooden paddle with Legos glued on it. And it's like, all right, in our sensual scene, I'm going to rub it against you. And it might create a little bit of fear that it's like, okay, what's going to happen? But it's like, oh, I'm just going to press it on you and give you like a Lego massage.
Things that, yeah, the Lego paddle, I've seen those in the markets and they're evil.
Yeah.
Um, Given what I've heard around out there and what some of the assumptions are, I think the assumptions maybe, and perhaps some professionals use it this way, sensual dominant to be code for something more directly sexual. That seems to be the impression I get from what people want it to be.
Yes. Yeah. People will think of sensual and think that it has to do with sex. And it's like, it doesn't have to be sexual all the time. And usually, at least for the most part in the lifestyle scene, when people say they want something sensual, they're basically trying to tell you, can you not beat me so hard? That's why I said they're trying to tell you to slow the fuck down.
We're going to put a handbrake on that. Yeah.
Can we? Yeah.
I also want to point out that since this may be being viewed by an international audience, that essential service providers, sex workers, the local laws will vary. Like if, say, in Amsterdam, very different than Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for example, in Japan, prostitution is technically illegal, and that covers a very vague range of things. That is not to say that there aren't professionals. Now, I'm trying to think if I've met pro subs over there. I must go find some. I also want to go find some of the male workers too. Research, yay.
I do know some Japanese pro subs in Japan.
Oh, we'll talk. I might
Yeah.
want to intro some. Perhaps maybe even get them on the show.
Yeah.
Would be interesting. So, question, if any of the viewers are interested in seeking professional service, what are good questions to ask around making sure that the person, the professional, has their own boundary as well as expressing the potential client's boundary? What's some good phone tips?
I think I'd like to start with one thing you probably don't want to ask a provider is, hey, what you into? Because for those of you that are on FetLife and you see how people like at the bottom just list everything and it's just like 15,000 pages. And I tell people, like, if you ask me what I'm into, I don't think we have enough time because, there's, like I said, I have a rubber chicken and then I have a Lego paddle. I have a cupping set and then I have 5 Wartenberg wheels. So it's best if they reach out and say, hey, saw your profile. I'm curious about these things and I saw these topics on your website. Maybe we can figure out a way to incorporate that. But just to say, hey, what are you into is not going to cut it. Asking me what makes me happy might not work for what your body and mind can do.
I have noticed in different geographic communities and subcultures around kink that there can be certain friction around non-professionals and professional kinksters. Have you observed that?
Yeah, and I think it's just a little bit of confusion to where it's a little bit of confusion and some of it's valid. And you kind of brought it up, with the parties where sometimes pros say stuff like that, or they go to a party and that's a non-pro party, and they're trying to find clients. And it's like, that's not what you should do. This is a public party where everyone's just trying to have fun and not do that. Now, if the person comes up to you and says, hey, can we figure out a session, then give them your information, but that's not what the purpose of that party is for.
Kind of like walking up to a dentist at a party and going,
pretty much.
Which people do.
Yeah. They're like, oh, or, when you tell them you're going to be a doctor, they're just like, oh, so I have this rash. I'm just like, put your pants back on. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that, hey, pros, yeah, it's they make money, but they're just trying to create a fun, safe space for this person to play. And you have the people that think it's cheating. That's like, oh, well, this person has a significant other. Why are y'all doing this? This is cheating. And like I said, them seeing me helps them function a little bit better outside these walls.
So I have this thing around that happens from time to time. The I'm trapped on an airplane seat conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, sitting airplane, I like window seats, 50 years and I still love looking out the airplane, right?
Yeah.
And long flights, somebody might, small talk, oh, what do you do? And I was just like, I'm a sexuality educator. There's that pause, a beat, silence, and it can go in a lot of different directions at that point.
Yes.
Point, it can be like, oh, that's interesting. What are they serving for dinner tonight? That's nice. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, what's that book you're reading? Also nice. Then there's the,
Yeah.
and then there's a, oh, fascinating. Okay, that's great. I've got this like problem, and my dick doesn't, and I'm like, I had another situation where I happened to be sitting, I think, next to a couple, and the person asked me, and it was a male-female pair, and she asked me, I had the answer of I'm a sexuality educator, and then she turns to her male companion, husband, boyfriend, something, they were kind of middle-age-ish, and like whatever his name was, Tony, you should ask her about that thing. No, please don't.
No, 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 no.
Please
We're
don't.
not in a session right now.
Yeah. Have you had that?
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, we should talk to you. Or they'll come up to you and be like, oh, so you're an educator and a ProDomme. So I can, and they'll tell you, like, they're like, oh yeah, I just had a threesome. Or I'm just like, okay, yay. Don't know you.
Put on you. Yeah. Yeah. So how have you handled those? The trapped in the airplane conversation.
Um, it can be, yeah, you have the people that are just like, they'll change the subject and you're just like, okay, yay. You have the people that are just like, oh, and you already know they're thinking like, they're probably thinking like, oh, you're a prostitute or you hang with prostitutes, you have all the STIs and STDs in the world. When you're like, I actually help people, get testing and get medicine. Um, and then you have the people that want to share their whole life story and show you all their dick rashes. Um,
Yeah.
and you're just like, hey, um, I love your enthusiasm, but here's my card and we can chat later or send me an email and I can direct you to somebody else that will talk to you. But I think one of the tough parts of the conversation is telling them like, hey, my services aren't free, that, maybe the first 15 to 30 minutes we can have a free chat, but after that I do have to charge you because this is becoming a very long conversation.
Well, I had to find out about how, if you encountered a trapped in the airplane situation. So you do too. Okay.
Yeah.
Now back to the viewers. I am curious as to what you're curious about, because otherwise Anna and I are just going to talk. I mean, immensely fascinating individual. So I'm making sure that inviting y'all to, oh, in fact, do any of you have stories around whether you're a professional? We had a few share that. You're a service provider who've had boundary issues, or if you have been on the client side with boundary issues, let us know. We'd love to hear. So around the issue of consent and professional service providing, and you said that you've been educating also people new into the industry. Are you finding that the consent savviness is changing?
um yeah, I think more people are finding their voice about consent, but I'm also noticing people are kind of very quick. Let's see, this is going to be a tough comment. People are very quick to call everything like a consent violation. So I was at one dungeon and we're just talking with some of the board members, and they were just like, we don't understand why we're getting so many reports about consent violations. And so, for the most part, when a dungeon gets a complaint about a consent violation, that means that a rape happened, that someone got hurt, that, maybe an implement was used that should not have been used. But it's people, this dungeon was getting blasted for like, oh, this person called me the wrong pronoun, or this person wore a shirt that I thought was a Nazi group. And it's like, is that a consent violation? Or, you don't want to invalidate the feelings of the people that were triggered, but did this person need to get blasted through on social media? Did there need to really be a whole case about it with the dungeon board and, NCSF and things like that?
NCSF is the National Coalition of Sexual Freedom. It's a fantastic organization, and we'll have a link in the chat also for those who are watching now, as well as later. There's going to be links in the text section when I post the video. So, National Coalition of Sexual Freedom. Sorry, I just wanted to butt in and explain what that was.
Thank you. So it's one of those things of like, all right, have we forgotten how to go up to people and say, hey, this triggered me? But sometimes, we want to leave it up to the DMs, we want to leave it up to the leaders of the play space we were at to address it. But, you have to be careful of sometimes the social media frenzy of like dragging people through the barbed wire.
And better conversation skills or conflict resolution skills, as well as how to speak up for oneself. I mean, we're really at a period of what I like to call the bleeding edge of thinking about not only consent, but gender identity, sexuality. And my hope, and I believe that we will get better at this. Let's see, somebody said, I've seen a few of those cases. Also, subs not taking responsibility for self-coercion. I don't know what to call it, but basically pushing themselves over their limits to please someone else and then blaming the other when the person really didn't pressure them.
Yeah, I see that happen a lot too, where a sub, will say like, oh, I can do it, I can do it. And then they push themselves, or, they get hurt or something happens that they didn't like. And then they call out the Dom and said, you should have known that I didn't like that, or you should have known that that wasn't safe for me, or why did you pressure me to do that? And they're like, you told me you were okay with this. You told me that this is what you wanted. When I first started, that happened actually in a scene where this person, we negotiated for like a week, and they were like, I want this, I can do this. And I was like, here are the safe words, here are the safe gestures. They're like, yeah, I want heavy impact. And I'm like, what if you get scratched and bleed? They're like, that's fine. Put a band-aid on and keep going. And I was like, what if you cry? They're like, if I cry, keep going. And so we're doing the scene and things are going well. And we end the scene and they're like, okay, I don't need aftercare. I'm good. Next thing I know, like the people at the dungeon are like, hey, we know you, we trust you, but this person came back and said like you hurt them, they didn't like the toys you used, and you should have known that that isn't what they wanted, or that they wanted the check-ins to be like this, not like that. And I was like, I don't understand, because we had been talking for a while and they were okay with everything we discussed. I showed them everything I was going to use before we started. And, sometimes people just get, yeah, they pressure themselves into thinking they can take all of that. And then they're like, oh, I don't like it. And we also have to teach our subs, you know, to speak up, and they can stop a scene or say, hey, can you change that toy? Can you change that position? Can we change the equipment that we're on? And it doesn't mean the end of the world. Just because you said you want to change something or stop something doesn't mean the end of the world. Usually the scene can go on. It's just something needs to be adjusted unless something drastic happened and you need to end it.
And that would be the person that's like saying, I can do all of it, and then later on coming back and going, you were bad. How do you even filter for that?
It's tough because it made me think, like, I was like, am I a consent violator? Like, I thought the scene was good. And I was like, shit, they didn't say anything afterwards to me. And then I had people from the dungeon like, hey, like, they're a crying mess. And I was like, okay, maybe the scene was very cathartic for them. Maybe something reminded them of something and they weren't prepared for that. And that happens. You're going to have clients and partners, play partners, where you're playing and you might have been playing with them for years and you play the same way. And something that day, their physiology, something they just cry. They can't take it. They can't take as much, and just things just don't feel right. And that happens. And I tell people, like, kink is not here to make us all perfect. Kink community is not perfect. And we need to realize that we are emotional beings, we are sexual beings, and some days are going to be better than others.
I got another comment here from someone here in Colombia. Hello to Colombia and South America.
Yay!
This is so cool that I've got international folks here. The pro scene is very small, and I'm glad to hear that the way I handle my boundaries is not very different from how other coworkers do. Here, sex work is just being recognized as
Aw,
work, and clients will always want to take advantage of it. Thank you very much for sharing this space with us.
aw.
And somebody else asked, how much do you encounter clients' trauma and PTSD, and how do you deal with it?
So when I talk with clients, I ask them, like, hey, is there anything physical, mental, and emotional that could affect how we play in this scene, in our session, in our moment together? And sometimes you need to ask them that, so they can give you an answer, because sometimes they're not going to tell you, like, oh, I have anxiety. Oh, don't use that toy on me because it reminds me of a toy that was used on me when I was a child. And so you have to ask them. And then, I had one client, he's like, hey, I don't like knives because I was stabbed, but he's like, I wanna try it, because I feel like it would be fun. And I was just like, okay. I'm like, I'm not going to touch you with the knife. I'm just going to lay it next to you and see how you feel for a minute. And so slowly it was just like almost like exposure therapy. Like, here it is, not going to touch you. Here it is, I'm going to open the knife. Here it is, I'm going to flick it, put it away. Here it is, I'm just going to lay it on your back, take it away. And so you have to be careful, because most pros aren't therapists.
Mhm.
Yes, some of the stuff we do can be therapeutic, can be healing, but we have to remember that we are not therapists, and we don't want to cause any permanent harm to the people we see. I had to let go of one client because I could tell that they just enjoyed living in victimhood. They were abused as a child, and they just kept wanting, like, heavy scenes, make me cry, heavy scenes, make me cry. And it just felt off. And then they revealed that, hey, I was abused as a kid. And I was like, well, it sounds like you just want to keep being abused. Like, what about this is healing? Because it feels like I'm just emanating your parent right now. And
That mu
so,
that must not have felt good for you to be put, in a sense, non-consensually put in the role
yeah,
of the abuser.
yeah. And I was like, we can't continue this. And
Mhm.
then she opened up and she's like, I don't even really like the kink scene. I don't even really like service, not a service sub at all. And I was like, all right, well, there we go. Like, you just wanted someone that could continue helping you not heal.
There was a comment of perhaps they may not even know trauma or
Yeah.
PTSD until it comes up mid-session. Now, you mentioned about not being a therapist because that ProDoms, ProSubs, and ProSwitches are essentially skilled entertainers. Um,
Mhm.
Now, with my work, with my coaching, I have had a handful of occasions where I have worked um, in conjunction with, in collaboration with my student's therapist. I even had one really delightful occasion where my student brought me in to her session with her therapist.
Oh,
And just for the therapist to ask me about anything about kink. And it was really a neat 90 minutes.
that's
Like,
awesome.
uh, but I've also had like situations where the communications have been communicating with a therapist, not in their office.
Mhm.
Wondering, have you had situations of working in conjunction, collaboration with a mental health care professional or any sort of healthcare professional of your clients?
Let's see. I've had some therapists come to some of my classes before, and we were able to ask them some questions. That's been a lot of fun. I've been on some podcasts with therapists. Erica Miley is amazing. She has a cool, I think, was it Sex Talk with Erica Miley is her podcast. Um, and she's great. And she interviews people in every field of sex work, and it's wonderful. From authors to pros to everything. So really cool podcast there. But I would really, yeah, love to work more with therapists so people can see like, hey, this is not just a physical thing. This is also a mental and emotional thing. And I will have to say that not every pro dom, pro sub, and pro switch will have the same
Mhm.
entertainer education.
Yeah.
So you have to really look into the person that you're going to see and be like, all right, well, let me see their social media. Let me see their website. What can they do? What do they have the skills that I want them to use on me? Are they going to treat me with respect type of thing?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad that there's more uh, in the helping profession, the therapeutic and mental health and medical profession. There's seems to be a more new generation that's not like freaked out about kink or for
Yeah.
professional entertainers. Um, I, I've been working with Sexual Health Alliance, and they have a they have a certification program where there's a lot of mixing of different kinds of helping professionals.
Hmm.
And it's so fascinating watching, and it's about damn time that instead of the siloed industry,
Yeah.
that different specializations are talking to one another. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, I mean, here you are on my little show. So let's see. I see something else. We have a lot of therapists joining us on Munches to Understand, at least one every month.
That's awesome.
Months. Yeah, and to the person who posted that, please feel free to point them to Sexual Health Alliance, the Kink Informed certification. It's like a 6 months program, and it's also an ASEX certification as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's been a delight being involved with them. So yeah. Now we are getting towards our 90 minutes. Last chance, y'all, for live questions from the room. But Anna, what's a thought around consent that you would like people to go out and think about or practice? Something that's achievable.
Practice saying no. In the mirror, practice saying no. Run lines in your head like, okay, if this scenario happens, I'm going to say no.
Oh,
And
let me try it with you. Let me try it with you. Okay. How do you like to be addressed during sessions, by the way?
Queen Anna.
Queen Anna, be naked with me in my session.
I know you would like that, but no.
Queen Anna, can I lick Nutella off your neck?
No. Some stuff I'm just like, no.
Somebody's like, I'm in Colombia, so a bit far. We also collaborate on psychology thesis to bring BDSM consent system to teenagers, students in schools, etc.
I love that.
Adapting it, good. For the person in Colombia, Sexual Health Alliance is international and online. We actually have students from South America. We have students from South Asia, and a few in Europe, so all over. So check it out. And I'm really glad to hear that there's discussion around kink and consent system and for students in schools happening. Excellent. Oh, hello. I see a SHA person, Sexual Health Alliance person.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to
So,
look into that. This sounds amazing.
oh yeah, yeah. Oh, call me. I'll tell you all about it. I'm really impressed.
Okay.
Very impressive. So practice saying no. I like that. Looking in the mirror and saying no. Perhaps
Yeah.
ask oneself ridiculous questions.
Yes. And if you can, practice with a friend, help each other say no. And then you realize that the skills you're learning with seeing pros and playing with other people at the dungeon lifestyle wise, these are some skills that can help you in your everyday life.
Yeah, true that, true that. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank the guests that have joined us live, and for those who are watching us later in the video. This is Consent Dojo, and it's all about building your consent muscle. So go out there and practice saying no beautifully and building your consent muscles. Thanks for joining us, and we'll have another show coming up next month. Stay tuned.